Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 23 playthrough of the Colorado Rockies. We are finally past the amateur draft and nearing the trade deadline here in the month of July. The Rockies have had a huge turnaround season here in our second year as general manager. 66-42 record, best in the National League. 4.5 up on the San Francisco Giants for the NL West. So our goal is obviously to make the playoffs, and quite honestly, our goal probably should be to hold on to the best record in the National League. Honestly, since I was only hoping this would be a 500-ish team this year, if we can have a first-round bye, I will view that as a huge victory. So it gives us a little bit of an insurance if the Braves happen to get by us for the best record in the National League, but certainly would hope at this point that we're able to hold off the Giants, maintain the victory that we seem poised for in the NL West, and earn a first-round bye, and it's going to be hard to view this season as anything but a success. You can see that our center fielder, Tony Padilla, is having an excellent season, second in the National League in batting average, second in OPS, second in batter WAR. Just a fantastic season from the 26-year-old. Has really just exploded onto the scene this year. You can see he didn't hit for much power his first 2 years in the majors. This year he's got 28 doubles and 27 home runs, hitting .341. Pretty good defensive center fielder. He's somehow turned himself into an MVP candidate, which is a big part of the good season that we're having. Jamel Cohen, our veteran first baseman, has a long hitting streak this year, .290 average, 17 homers, and 324 at-bats. So a little less power thus far than we would have expected from him, but we've gotten a lot more power than we would have expected from Padilla thus far, so it definitely all evens out. And then Juan Vargas, with a 15-3 record, is running away with the National League lead in wins, and certainly looks poised to potentially be a 20-game winner, which is obviously a relatively rare feat compared to the way it was 20 or 30 years ago, 40 years ago in the real world, and at this point, 70, 80, 90 years ago in the OOTP universe that we've created here. And our new closer, Jose Calderon, is third in the National League in saves. So it has been a good start, and we're way past the start point with 108 games on the books. We're exactly 2/3 of the way through the season, so it's just been a really good season so far for the Rockies. And we did, since the end of our last episode, which was still on this same date, just offline, made 3 trades that we think are going to hopefully improve our chances at winning this year. Walk through them one at a time, starting with the first one that we did. We picked up Will Lucio, a 24-year-old reliever from the Twins. Profiles, in my opinion, is a pretty good pitcher for Coors. Ground ball pitcher, ground ball or pitcher type. Pretty good movement on his pitches. He's just in his first year with Minnesota this year. He's been primarily a starter for them, 2-5 with a .494 ERA. But he's a guy who's under our control for the next several seasons. So it gives us a little youth in the pitching staff. We did have to give up 2 decent prospects to give him. Jesus Castro is a guy that we picked in the 4th round last year. Didn't love his personality and don't love the fact that he doesn't have a ton of movement and also isn't a ground ball pitcher. So didn't see him as someone who was going to be a big part of the future in Colorado. He hasn't gotten out of rookie ball yet. He's only 19. But we've moved on from him. And then we also moved on from the minor league left fielder Jordan Reynolds, who I believe had been a 2nd-round pick several years ago of the Rockies. Just kind of viewed him as a 4th or 5th outfielder type. He did move up to AAA this year, where he's hitting .247 with 9 homers and almost 300 at-bats. So certainly not setting the world on fire, not that great defensively. Felt that the opportunity to bring on a relatively young pitcher who we think was well suited to our ballpark, and even though we intend to use him as a reliever, could also be a spot starter for us, or even be a fourth or fifth starter potentially. Felt like that move made sense for us. But that obviously left us with a pitcher, and we needed to clear a spot in our rotation. So we traded away the right-hander Stephen Moore to the Nationals. This is a guy who's been up with Colorado several years. We dropped him out of the rotation recently. You can see a 6.75 ERA this season. Although he does have really good movement on his pitches, he's fragile. He's not a ground ball pitcher. And feel like with parts of 5 seasons in the majors now and a 5.57 ERA, it's just not working out for him in Colorado. And even looking at this year's pitching splits, his ERA is 7.07 at home, 6.58 on the road. Wasn't going to be making a ton of money in arbitration next year, but felt that the opportunity to potentially get Lucio into the role that Moore now has as a long reliever in the bullpen, or in the case of the trade we made, bringing on another pitcher who we think fits better, Chase Crawford. Extreme ground ball tendencies with really good movement on his pitches in the last year of his contract, so he's going to be a free agent after this year. But he's put up a 2.35 ERA with Washington this season. I think that he will fit better into the very ground ball prone and high movement pitching staff we've put together. We also got a minor league right reliever, Tony Farias. Don't view him as a big time potential player for us. He's 25 years old. He's fragile. Does have a good personality, but he would be a 7th or 8th guy out of the bullpen if we ever had to have him at the major league level. Doesn't totally fit the profile that we're looking for. So felt like the additions of Lucio and Crawford give us 2 pitchers who are more suited to our park and what we're trying to do. Getting rid of Stephen Moore opened up one spot for them. So then we had to make another trade, and we traded away Chris Gonzalez, who's the other guy that we demoted to the bullpen a few weeks back. 4.78 ERA this year. Pretty good personality. But don't think he is a great Coors Field pitcher either. He has been more successful than Moore with a 4.34 ERA over the course of his career. But he's also a guy who's making $3.7 million this year, and he's set to make over $4 million next year in arbitration. Given that we were basically using him as a long reliever right now, felt like we could make the team better for this season by slotting Crawford and Lucio into the spots that were inhabited by Gonzalez and Moore in the bullpen, and certainly with the case of Lucio, and even maybe with the case of Crawford. Those are guys who could start for us in a pinch if we needed to. I don't think they're as pure starters as Moore and Gonzalez were, but definitely could do the job. Didn't get a ton back for Gonzalez. It was more to, as I said, open up spots for some ground ball focused pitchers on the team to hopefully make the roster better this year, and then also to potentially get that somewhat large arbitration number associated with Gonzalez off of the books for next season. So we got back some cash, which was nice, and a familiar face for those who watched our Pittsburgh playthrough. Luis Flores, who, if you remember Luis Flores with Pittsburgh, no shock that he's out with multiple injuries at this point, wrecked physically, out 4 to 5 weeks with a strained ab, also dealing with hamstring tightness. Does have a great personality for the clubhouse, captain personality type, which will certainly help when he's back. The thought is we bring him up with September call-ups. He's probably out till late August. We can put him on a rehab assignment for a week or two potentially before we bring him back in September, and feel like he will give us a veteran bat and even more of a good presence in the clubhouse in the final month of the season and potentially the playoffs as we are trying to compete. He's a free agent after this year, so don't view him as a big part of our future. but felt like we got some cash back and we at least got a player who can maybe help us in September, and if we have some injuries in return for Gonzalez. So the end result of that is that actually we made those 3 trades, and we actually have more money available for free agents now and more money for extensions next season. So feel like we've put ourselves into a little bit more flexible of a position financially, while hopefully also making our pitching staff better on the margins with those 2 moves that we made. Fan interest ultimately as a result of all of those trades got a 1-point bump. Not all that significant, but with attendance being stronger over the last month and a half or so, and the fact that we are well into the pennant race, we're going to bump ticket prices up just another $1. I don't do it all that often, probably don't do it enough, but think that every little bit of extra revenue that we can generate is a positive thing for next year, hopefully in terms of our budget. And we still, even if we take a little hit on attendance, we only needed to get to about 36.4 this year to meet owner's goal. We're way above that target, so feel like we've got a little flexibility to hopefully generate a little more revenue from that move. Last thing to check in on before we get moving, actually 2 things to check in on. This is the first one. Just want to check in on the 2 guys that we had put into the rotation a few weeks ago when we demoted both Gonzalez and Moore to the bullpen. Tyrone Colbert has been awful. He came into this, and he's only started 2 games, and he came in with a pretty good ERA. But we look at the game log on him, and his 2 starts have just been awful. 8 hits, 7 earned runs in 2 innings, and then 7 hits and 5 earned runs over an inning and 2/3. Doesn't really seem to be working as a starter. We'll certainly give him another start or 2 before potentially making a change. As I talked about, Crawford or Lucio could certainly start, but so could Esteban Washington. I think Vinny Gutierrez. I think even Latrell Young could. So we've got plenty of guys we could put into that role. Ethan Mingo, who was an all-star as a reliever for us this year, has been a little better since he moved into the bullpen or into the rotation. You can see his game scores have kind of steadily progressed over the 3 starts he's had post the All-Star break, and he's at least gone 5 innings each time. Hasn't been great, but has been at least respectable in that role. So we'll see how those guys continue to go, and do feel now when we look at our tendencies that basically at this point we only have Jesus Galindo and Jordan Stallworth, the lefties, who are not either ground ball focused in terms of their ground ball to fly ball ratio or extreme ground ball pitchers. So feel that we have revamped the pitching staff a bit to hopefully be even more effective down the stretch than it has been over the first 2/3 of the season. And the last thing I wanted to check in before we start playing the games again is just some of the top prospects in our system. Willis Lopez, who we picked up in the 2nd round this year, has only played 5 games at this point in rookie ball, only hitting .222. But clearly expect with that high potential and that really good personality for development that he will be hopefully rapidly moving through our system. You may notice that our other 1st-round pick this year is not on the Rookie League roster. That is not because he's been promoted. It's because he's a little banged up. Elijah Smith tweaked his oblique in his first start. He's only on the IL for 1 more day, not a serious injury. He had actually looked pretty good, allowing 1 hit over 2 2/3 with 3 strikeouts before that minor injury. But hopefully the cornerstone of our draft, the 3rd overall pick, will get a few more starts in rookie ball this year, and we'll see whether or not we can move him up to A ball at some point. And finally, we will check in on our number 1 pick from last season, Israel Cota. He's been in Double-A this year, did not do well there at the end of last season. More respectable this year, .264 average, 4 homers, does have 12 doubles and 9 triples. he was by nature a shortstop. We've been trying to get him trained in second and third also, so that's why we're forced starting him at second base now. Still think that the glove potentially will be very useful at the major league level with the quality and the versatility of it. Questioning his bat a little bit at this point based on, his performance in Double A and just looking at where our scout thinks his potential is. It's not as high as it was when we drafted him a little over a year ago. I think that he can still be a valuable player for us, but quite honestly, it may be in more of a utility role, which is a little disappointing for a guy that we took coming out of college as a first rounder who we felt like we knew exactly what we were getting. He still could be a really good starting second baseman for us and good insurance at shortstop for us. And who knows? He's got a high work ethic. We've got good coaching. Maybe there still are some mechanical things our coaching staff will work on with him that will help him develop a little more than he's expected to at this point. But I would think we would see him in the majors at some point next year. If a week or two from now he's got that batting average in early April, say up to 270, 280 for the season, probably will promote him to AAA just to see how he handles the stronger competition at that level. And then my assumption would be that he would start next year in AAA and then potentially make his major league debut towards the end of next season, or if we have some injuries, or if he gets into camp and looks, better than we think he's going to be right now. And the last of the prospects to mention is Bobby Perez, who's basically ready for the majors. We have him down in AAA working on playing first base now, just to kind of improve his defensive versatility. But he's been pretty successful in AAA this year, 278 average, 18 homers. He is definitely going to be part of our team next year, and very well could be a September call-up. I think he does give us potential this coming off season to maybe move on from someone like Juan Gonzalez, who, despite having that great home run power, is wrecked physically. Arbitration number going to start getting higher into the $3.5 to $4 million range. And despite that great power with the 27 homers and 343 at-bats, is a slightly below average player in terms of his OPS plus, slightly above average in terms of his WRC plus. He's been, as we've taken over the team last year into this year, a productive offensive player for us, at least in terms of home runs when he's been healthy, with 31 homers and 387 at-bats. But the end result, given a lot of strikeouts, average-ish number of walks, and a pretty low batting average, hasn't been all that productive. And given that his salary is going to likely go up a couple million next year, we'll likely be looking to move on from him in the offseason. We tried to actually trade him now when we were working on those other trades. He basically had no value. We're hoping that might look a little different in the offseason, but might be wishing and hoping on that front rather than basing it in reality. But certainly think that if we move on from Gonzalez, Bobby Perez should be ready to hopefully give us better production in that spot next season. And as I mentioned, it's very conceivable, given that our pitching staff all has pretty good stamina, that we'll stick with 13 pitchers when we get to September call-ups and look to bring up Bobby Perez and Luis Flores at that time to help our lineup when we can expand to 28 players on the roster. But clearly injuries could change that over the next 5+ weeks until we get to September call-ups. But we'll see how the team does. As I mentioned, the goal is definitely to win the NL West, and the goal is to have a first-round bye. And we've got 54 more games to see how we do in executing on those goals. And we made it to the start of August, past the trade deadline. Was not a great month for us in the month of July. We've still got a 3-game lead now on the Dodgers. We're up 3.5 on the Giants here as the month of August begins, but you can see we're 4-6 on our last 10. Both of those teams have been making ground up on us, especially the Dodgers with 6 straight wins. Taking a look at our team statistics, it was a similar month to June. We were 3 games over 500, 14-11. So we're playing solid, respectable ball, but nowhere near the torrid pace that we had jumped out to in April and May. Not a surprise. Number 1 in the league in runs scored. Runs allowed, we're down to 11th, but we were 15th last year and 30th in all of baseball last year. So I do think the fact that we are 11th at this point does represent some real progress. And you can see we are still much better at home than we are on the road, with a winning percentage 100 points higher in cores than on the road. So I think that the changes that we've made are paying off. You look at the Pythagorean record, though, and we're now 4 games above that. So the performance that we've had on the field suggests that we should be in quite a battle with both the Dodgers and the Giants for the NL Central. We'll have to see if we revert towards that mean over the coming weeks, and this becomes a even tighter race between the 3 teams than it already is, or hopefully we're able to play a little better with some of the moves that we've made that I think will bolster our pitching staff and hopefully give us an opportunity to do better on the field and hang on to this lead in the NL West, and hopefully even expand it over the coming weeks. And unfortunately, the first week of August was relatively rough for the Rockies. We lost 3 out of 4 at St. Louis. We did take 2 out of 3 when we got back home against the Phillies. We've got 3 against St. Louis now at home, and then 4 on the road against the Phillies. So kind of an interesting first half of the month for the Rockies, where we got 14 games against only 2 teams, and they're all out of our division. Then we've got Washington before we do start playing the teams in our division, with San Diego, the Diamondbacks, Padres again, and then the Giants before the end of the month. But 3-4 week, definitely not good, and the Dodgers and Giants continue to play well. You can see the Dodgers especially 9-1 over their last 10, so they've closed 5 games on the standings on us, and they're only half a game behind. So our quest to have the best record in the National League is still intact, but it's definitely not the Braves that are the threat for the best record. It's the Dodgers and the Giants. And the issue with us getting passed by the Dodgers or the Giants for the best record is that that's going to knock us out of a not just home field advantage for the National League playoffs, but it's also going to knock us right out of a first-round bye if we end up in the wild card. So hopefully the team can play a little better. Don't know what's going to magically make that happen, but hopefully the guys that we brought on board will get a little more comfortable playing with one another, and we can start stringing some wins together, because it's gotten real tight on us real fast. And with the addition last month of captain personality Aiden Asher, and then Luis Flores, who hopefully will be joining us in September, Clubhouse seems like it's in good shape. Team chemistry pretty strong, no complaints. We've got a lot of leaders, captain, pretty good clubhouse at this point. There are a few poor relationships with our manager, particularly with 3 of our pitchers, Colbert, Lucio, and Stallworth, as well as the Rule 5 acquisition, Manlio Milhinhos, who continues to play exceedingly well in limited playing time with a 345 average and 177 at-bats as a part-time outfielder for us. So things don't seem too bad in terms of team chemistry. I think we've just kind of hit a rough patch in terms of our performance on the field, and hopefully we can snap out of it. And the Rockies did play a little better last week, particularly Andrew Booker, first baseman slash outfielder, hit 478, 3 homers, 7 ribbies. But although we played better, we won 2 out of 3 against St. Louis, and then we've already won 2 out of the first 3 against Philadelphia. The Dodgers just continue to play lights out, and they are now ahead of us in the division by half a game. So if you had told me at the start of this season we were going to be securely in a wild card position in mid-August, I would have definitely been very pleased with that. But given the fast start we got off to and where we've come from, and the fact that a pretty decent lead in the division has evaporated over the last 2.5, 3 weeks, not really thrilled with where we are right now. But hopefully we can continue to battle with the Dodgers and get past them. Don't want to start necessarily scoreboard watching or schedule watching this early in the season with half of August left, and then obviously most of September. But just did want to see. And interesting, we don't play the Dodgers until the end of the season, but we've got 6 games at home against the Dodgers to finish off the year in September. So I'd say it's kind of a weird schedule quirk to have 6 home games in a row, a six game homestand against a single team. But if we are still competing with them, which hopefully we will be for the division in a little over a month, the schedule with all of those home games is certainly in our favor in terms of hopefully having home field advantage, and also having the opportunity to make up a game in the standings every time we play them if we do end up being behind them. So got a lot of baseball to play to determine how important that last series will be, but it's good to see that we will have the Coors Field advantage if it comes down to a final series of the year to determine the NL West champions between us and the Dodgers. But as I said, there's a lot of work to do over the next 5 weeks or so to even make that final series important. And another decent but not great week in the books for the Rockies. We lost the final game of the 4-game series at Philadelphia, so we ended up splitting with them. But we did take 2 out of 3 at Washington and 2 out of 3 home against San Diego. So we are actually back into first place we're tied for first place with the Dodgers at this point, 5 up on San Francisco. Certainly looks like it's going to be a good battle between us and the free-spending Dodgers to determine who the top team in the NL West is. And actually the Dodgers' budget, not as big as it was even a year or two ago. Still have the astronomical market size, extreme fan loyalty, and very high fan interest, but their budget has been cut way back, from $382 million to $266 million just over the past decade, as they've been having a brutal stretch of performance on the field despite what was once one of the top payrolls in the game. But it looks like they may be finally turning the tide and turning the tables this season, which is going to certainly make things more challenging for us in Colorado if we've got a big spending Dodgers team that actually has good management running it. Going to make this playthrough a lot more interesting to be competing with them for the division every year. And checking in on the 2 guys we moved into the rotation last month, and Tyrone Colbert and Ethan Mingo haven't, you can see their ERAs both going in definitely the wrong direction. They have not been as effective as they were out of the bullpen, which we weren't expecting. But they also haven't even really been all that much more effective than Moore and Chris Gonzalez, the two guys that we had traded away. So we're going to at least see what manager Nick Hartman wants to do with the rotation. Doesn't mean that we're going to do it, but he would definitely change things up a bit. Still got Alvarado, Vargas, and Galindo as our top 3. and he wants to give Chase Crawford, who we brought on board in that trade about a month ago at this point, and Estevan Washington a chance in the rotation. Given that neither Mingo nor Colbert really latched onto those roles, I'm willing to let the manager make the decision on these. We'll see if maybe we can find a little bit of lightning in a bottle with Crawford or Washington. Feel maybe Crawford is our best chance at it. Definitely has the stamina to be a starter. That curveball is a little below average, but a really good fastball and an above average sinker. And he has started large portions of his career, largely before this season. But back in the day was a regular starter with Toronto, pretty regular with Cleveland, started some games with Washington. So we'll see if maybe he can give us a little jolt in the rotation. The main thing is obviously for Alvarado, Vargas, and Galindo to hopefully all remain healthy and somewhat effective, because those would be our top three for the playoffs, clearly. The hope is that we can identify a fourth starter that we feel somewhat confident in by the time we get to the playoffs. But right now it hasn't been obvious who that person's going to be. And checking in quickly on our top prospects, first-round pick Elijah Smith, 3-1 record in 6 games. So although he went undefeated through his high school career, has now lost a game as a professional, but still pretty nice start to his career in rookie ball. 3.35 ERA over 37 2/3 innings. Barely 19 years old. Certainly don't feel like there's any need to promote him to A-ball right away. Doesn't look like he's made any real significant strides in terms of his ratings yet, but he's a month into his professional career, so it's going to take a little bit of time. Willis Lopez, our second-round pick, definitely struggling. The 18-year-old hitting just a .184. Not all that concerned about it. Our scout still thinks he's a very high potential player. OSA pretty high on him also. Think that he'll work his way out of these early career blues. Israel Coda hasn't bumped up the average that much. Only got it up to 266 from 264. He is almost completely proficient in terms of where we think his potential is at playing the position of second base, though. So I think once he kind of has that nailed, we may move him up, in a week or two to AAA and maybe start him at third base at that level to continue to hopefully build his defensive versatility, and hopefully we can figure out what's going on with him offensively also, because I do think he is a guy with the defensive versatility that he has, could still be a pretty valuable player for us if we can get him to really unlock the potential we think he has as far as hitting. But if he doesn't unlock all of that potential as far as a hitter, he may be more of a utility guy, which is what it is at this point. And our Rockies had been healthy for really the last couple months, not a lot of injuries at all, but that all changed over the last day. Left fielder Yoshitaro Nakahara, guy who we knew was wrecked physically. We've been trying to baby him through the season, resting him anytime his stamina gets down a bit, and only playing him against left-handed pitchers. And he has been productive for us in that role, hitting close to 250 with 28 homers and 77 ribbies and 377 at-bats. But he's day-to-day with a quad strain right now for another 5 weeks. Hard for me to justify trying to get someone who's wrecked physically and 37 years old to play through that, even though it's only a minimal impact on his running. Even if we're playing him at DH, he's still going to need to be running out hits, so we may put him on the IL. And then second baseman Juan Castillo, fractured finger, out for 5 weeks. He clearly needs to go on to the IL. which won't be the end of the world because we did bring in Danny Ruiz, is kind of a super utility guy this last off season. He's hit 295 for us and 281 at bats. He's been playing more in left field for us recently. You can see that's where he started the most games this year, but he's also started in center, short, third, and second for us. And we'll get to see him, over the next 5 weeks, basically until the playoffs, likely being our starting second baseman. So we are going to send Castillo down, or not send Castillo down, but send Castillo to the IL, and that'll allow us to hopefully start Ruiz at second. And then I think we're going to be real cautious with Nakahara. If we didn't have in the minors Bobby Perez waiting to come up, I might kind of keep trying to play Nakahara through that injury, but I think that you could argue that Perez is, at least according to his ratings, a better player at this point. He's got the batting average up to 295 in AAA with 30 homers. We're certainly not going to keep starting him at first base. And we will actually set his position back to a right fielder before we bring him up. But one of the top prospects in our system, number 66 in all of baseball, number one, first round draft pick, number 21 overall in 2048. Bobby Perez is going to come up a little earlier than we had anticipated. Thought we'd have him up about a week from now when we got to September roster expansion, but because of the injuries, think that it makes sense to bring him up now. And we'll also bring back Victor Merakin, who we had sent down when we picked up Aiden Asher about a month and a half ago. Merakin will come back up to be a utility infielder for us, be backing up at second base Danny Ruiz. And honestly, with the two moves that we just made at Albuquerque, we're actually going to promote Israel Cota right now. The 266 batting average in Double-A is not incredibly impressive, but at this point he's played 129 games in Double-A over 2 seasons. He's 23 years old. Yeah, we're going to give him a little more time in Double-A. I'm going back on what I thought. The bat just hasn't developed that well at this point, and I do wonder a bit if it could damage him bringing him up to AAA a little too early. I want to kind of try to accelerate his development. Maybe in a couple of weeks we'll give him a few games there at the end of the season, but not going to push things with him right now. And the injuries keep coming. Center fielder Tony Padilla, day-to-day with a stiff back. As we talked about earlier, he's had a fantastic season for us. Batting average is down to 316, but still 32 homers, 81 runs scored, 82 driven in. Probably going to take him out of the MVP conversation, despite that 5.9 WAR missing the next couple of weeks. But given that he's fragile physically, don't want to push things. We are up 2 games on the Dodgers as we've won 4 in a row. Been playing better right now. Definitely don't feel great about the fact that we now have starting second baseman, starting left fielder against righties, and our starting center fielder all on the IL. But we'll try to piece things together for these final weeks of the season. You can see they're all out material time still at this point, and it's August 27th. So hopefully we'll have Padilla back by mid-September. But honestly, with Castillo and Nakahara, we're not going to have those guys back to the playoffs. Maybe they play a game or two of that final series against the Dodgers if everything goes well. But we're going to have to make it work without them. We did have Luis Flores recently start his rehab assignment. Played 1 game down in AAA. We were going to wait till September call-ups to bring him on board, but think we probably do bring him on board now. Danny Ruiz, who had been getting the run at second base with the injury to Juan Castillo, is now going to actually become our center fielder. He's got really good range out there. Part of the reason we brought him up is you look at those ratings, and he can play any position on the field except for catcher, and he can play all of them very competently, and many of them at a very high level. So I think that versatility will help us a bit. Don't love the fact that that probably means some extra playing time for Marroquin at second base, since he's hit just a $189 when he's been up with the big team this year. I guess I could look. I don't think we've got a great infield option down there that's better than him at second base. Tyrell Averett is, a captain personality who's an experienced player, but I'd rather give the younger Marroquin the playing time at second over him. Darius Stokes, another guy, I think he's got some potential, but he's hitting .222 in AAA this year at the age of 25. Just don't see either of those guys being a difference maker for us. So we are going to bring up Mr. Flores. Hope we can keep him healthy. And we're going to switch things up to, given that we are very low on outfielders right now, although Andrew Booker can also play outfield for us, although he's been a first baseman more recently. Actually, we'll probably have to look at that with the fact that we have had Jamel Cohen more in a DH role this year since we moved Booker, or actually more accurately, our manager moved Booker to where he was playing first base more often. We were kind of fine with that, but now with Flores on the roster too, who can play first base for us, may make sense to give Booker a little more playing time in the outfield. That being said, our best defensive center fielder at this point is without a doubt Mr. Ruiz. So even if with the addition of Flores, Booker spends a little more time in the outfield, we're still going to have Ruiz in the center field, which means Marroquin's going to be playing second for us more often than not. And despite the injuries, the last week in August went okay. We swept the Diamondbacks, then we took 2 out of 3 against San Diego, but we did lose 2 out of 3 against the Giants to finish off the month. So taking a look at the standings, the lead has shrunk back to just half a game against the Dodgers, with losses in 2 out of our last 3, while they won 3 in a row. Still have the division lead as we begin September, but it's much more tenuous than it was at the beginning of August, without a doubt. Take a quick look at our injury situation here, and hopefully getting some of our guys back. Looks like Padilla's only a week away, so do think we will have him back in center field, hopefully in the not-so-distant future. Castillo and Nakahara still look unlikely to be back before the end of the season. Take a look at our team statistics, and once again, we had a solid month in August, 17 and 12. So these 3 months in a row, 3 over, 3 over, 5 over 500, good, solid, respectable months that will get a team into the playoffs more years than not. It's just that it's such a transition from the incredible start we had in April and May that it feels a little bit hollow. Still first in the National League in runs scored, have dipped to 12th in runs allowed. But we still have a pretty good home field advantage, 45 and 22 record. We're 23 games over 500 at home. We're only 5 games above 500 on the road. So I do think that what we've been trying to do with the pitching staff is working. Chase Crawford has only made that 1 start now, but his ERA did go lower, so hopefully that's a sign that we've got something there with him, taking a look at the game log. 8 innings pitched, 3 hits. Certainly a real good debut as a starter for us. So hopefully maybe he'll solidify that 4th spot in the rotation over the rest of the season and potentially for the playoffs. And you can see in a relatively shocking development in this day and age, Juan Vargas already has 20 wins, even though it's only September 1st. So he seems pretty likely to lead the league in that category and has been a real nice free agent signing for us. I don't know why I said for us twice. Dave Alvarado, the big free agent acquisition from this past offseason, 11-11, 4.77 ERA. I have to be honest, it's a little disappointing when all is said and done for a guy that we're spending $30 million on. But he's still gone out there every day, delivered a decent performance for us. Hopefully he can get the record above 500 before the end of the year. And we did front load the contract a little bit, so the numbers are going to be coming down over the coming years as he gets a little bit older. But clearly our hope is that he pitches somewhat better than he has thus far with us over the course of his tenure in Colorado. And given that all 13 of our pitchers do have really good stamina, as I said, we're going to stick with 13 pitchers, even with roster expansion most likely, and maybe look to bring up a couple bats who can hopefully help us down the stretch, or maybe a good fielder who can give us a little bit of something that we're missing as we get closer to the end of the season and try to hold off the Dodgers. And for our September call-ups, we're going to bring back Jose Brito. You may remember he was our Rule 5 pick back in 2048. Obviously spent all of last season on the Major League roster with us. Have had him down in AAA this year as he was a borderline roster player for us. And we also wanted to try to improve his ability to play some of these positions to become a little more versatile defensively. Hit 289 down in AAA, and he's hit 357 when he's been up with the big team. So certainly a player who can give us a little more versatility on the roster in general. And then we're also going to bring up the veteran shortstop Danny Fernandez. Was a minor league free agent signing back at the end of January. He's wrecked physically, hit 278 in AAA this year, but has an outstanding glove at shortstop. Feel like he can be a potential defensive substitute for us for Rogelio Terrazas, and also give us some better defense when Terrazas does need days off, which, given his durability, is not all that often. But think that, an excellent defensive player like Fernandez, not a bad person to have as the 28th guy on the roster. And with the fact that with some of the injuries we've had and the other promotions we've made and the expansion of the roster, we've weakened Albuquerque a little bit. We are going to, at this point, promote Israel Cota. He's got the batting average up to 273. So doing a little better there. We'll play him at second base initially. If he gets to his full proficiency there, then we'll play him at third a little bit before the end of the year. But might as well start to figure out exactly what we have or don't have with him. Checking in briefly on Lopez. The season is over, obviously, with that 184 average. Should have moved him up to Class A. Elijah Smith, too. I know there's definitely the argument to get those guys as much playing time at all as possible, which I get. But they're also so young. I don't want them to be overwhelmed at the next level higher. Feel like Smith is a better prospect to potentially bring up to rookie ball for a little extra playing time. I think I will do that with him since he played well. Maybe we'll get a couple starts for him. It says he's not ready, though. I don't want to push it. I know there's a lot of debate about how valuable the Aero ratings really are, but when they tell me the guy's just going to get crushed at a level, I tend to be pretty conservative with the development. So will let his season finish at that point. Checking in on another youngster, Bobby Perez. Pretty small sample size, but is hitting 300 with 2 homers in his first 20 at-bats. So certainly has been a nice addition to the roster here in August and hopefully the rest of September as our Rockies try to hold off the big bad Dodgers and the Giants here in the National League West. And we had been hoping that we might have Tony Padilla back soon, but his return is now looking a little more uncertain than it was before. Only had 1 day left on the IL, but the injury time is still unknown. That'll mean more time for Ruiz in center field, which is fine. It also means more time for Marroquin starting at second base, which isn't perfect, but it is what it is at this point. We're up 2.5 on the Dodgers at this point. They've lost 3 in a row. So the division is certainly not ours, but the magic number's down to 15, and as we've talked about, we've got that big 6-game series with them at the end of the month. Right now we've got 5 at home over 4 days against the Giants, followed by 3 at home against the Cubs. So the schedule here for these last 2.5 weeks of the month of September is pretty favorable for us in terms of games in Colorado. We've just got those 3 road games with San Diego left over the course of the entire season. So although San Francisco is a really good team that's chasing us in the standings, certainly would prefer to be playing them at home. And then the Cubs are one of the worst teams in baseball. Right now, record-wise, they are the worst team in baseball, a little worse than the Mariners. So the hope would certainly be to take both of the series against the Giants and the Cubs this coming week at home. Hopefully no additional injuries, and hopefully the guys who are banged up continue to heal and get closer to coming back. So it ended up being kind of a mixed week for the Rockies. We only won 2 out of 5 at home against the Giants, but we did sweep the beleaguered Cubs to kind of salvage a 5-3 record for the week. Now we're down to 9 games, 3 at San Diego and then 6 at home against the Dodgers. Taking a look at the standings, we are up a game on the Dodgers. San Diego, with their huge payroll, is barely over 500, but that could still be a good challenge for us. So there's going to be some heartache for one of these teams. We have clinched a playoff spot at this point, which is great progress in our second season, in really duplicating what we did with the Pirates. When we did our playthrough, we started this OOTP 23 playthrough with the Royals. Took us till the 4th season to get the Royals to the playoffs, but we made it in our second year with the Pirates, and now we're in the playoffs in our second year with the Rockies. But with the way the standings are right now and the way the season has gone, going to feel a lot better about that playoff spot if we end up earning it as NL West Division champions with a first-round bye rather than a wild card. But that is definitely up in the air with 9 games to go for both us and the Dodgers. Some good news. Luis Flores, who we picked up in that trade when we traded away Gonzalez a month and a half ago, hit for the cycle this week, and that was part of him being named NL Player of the Week, 14 hits and 27 at-bats. So kind of a monster week for him, and he's been good since he finally came up. Obviously a small sample size, but 386 batting average and 57 at-bats for the veteran certainly is helpful, would help. Speaking of helpful, if we could get some of our injured players back. Unfortunately, Padilla with that back stiffness still unknown, and Castillo and Nakahara looking very unlikely to be able to contribute over these final 9 games of the year. And as we get ready for that final 9 games of the season and the final 6 home games against the Dodgers, you can see we've been selling out recently. Would certainly expect that we'll be selling out against the Dodgers with the division on the line. And then we're going to have some playoff games one way or another, hopefully not until the division series. But we're going to have playoff games one way or another. So the higher ticket prices hopefully will help us a little bit on the margin as we try to generate a little bit of extra revenue. Definitely going to hit the attendance goal that ownership had. So I would, we'll see how the season goes, but tend to feel that we'll see where fan interest goes. We'll see what we do in the playoffs, but think that hopefully next year we'll be able to support a somewhat higher ticket price than we did on average over the course of this year. So 1 game up on the Dodgers as we head into these final week and a half of the season, these final games of the year. Even though San Diego, as we've talked about, is the team with the highest budget and one of the highest payrolls in baseball, they've built that San Diego market into just something incredible over the course of this playthrough. Have to hope that we can take 2 out of 3, even though we're on the road. Then a worst case scenario is we're flat-footed with the Dodgers for the final 6 games of the year, all at home. And taking 2 out of 3, there's a chance we go in with a lead also. So that is certainly the goal here for these last few days of the year. Bad start with a 3-4 loss in extra innings. Would have loved to have won that one. And the Dodgers won their 7th in a row. So we are now back in a flat-footed tie with the Los Angeles Dodgers for the NL West title. See what happens in these last 2 games in beautiful San Diego. Hopefully, like I said, we can win these last 2, take the series, and at worst be in a tie with the Dodgers as we begin those final 6 games. Unfortunately, we lost, and we're now a game behind the Dodgers. So after dominating this division since the early stages of the season, we got off to that really bad start in March, but we're incredible in April and May. Dominated the division all year, but now heading into this final 6-game homestand against the Dodgers, we are 1 game out, and we are in definite danger of having the 3rd best record in all of baseball behind just the Dodgers and the Rangers, but still having to play a wild card series because of the way the season has evolved. The Dodgers 9 wins in a row. Can see they've made up 4 games on us in the last 10, so we've gone from 3 up to 1 down. But the positive thing, and we've talked about this ever since we looked at the schedule, is that we've got the games at home at this point. So let's see what that home field advantage of Colorado means when we're trying to take a division. Although we're 1 game down, if we have the home field advantage that we think we have, there's no reason that we can't take 4 out of these 6 games and end up taking the division title. And we do get a 3-1 win in the first, so we're back to even with the Dodgers. At this point, we just need 3 out of 5. They jumped out to a 1-0 lead, tied it in the 5th, and then we got 2 in the 7th. Nice pitching performance from Vargas, although he doesn't get to improve on his league-leading win total. But good relief from Gutierrez, Colbert, and Calderon in support of him. So a nice start to this final series of the season. See if we can get the lead in the division back here today on Friday night. And we do not, with a 7-4 loss. Fortunately, Padilla comes back, but now we've got to win 3 of these last 4 to make it matter. So in a bit of a tough position. we actually jumped out to a 3-0 lead, and we're up 4-1 heading into the seventh, and then the Dodgers just exploded on the bullpen. Danny Rodas was not good in relief of Estevan Washington, and backs against the wall a little bit with needing to win 3 of these last 4. But hey, we're at home. Let's make it happen. But before we work on that, we're going to get Padilla back onto the roster. Probably makes sense to send down Fernandez. Yeah, he's got just 1 at-bat for us, played in just 1 game. Does have a hit in that 1 at-bat, but hasn't been incredibly important as a backup glove for us. And with Padilla coming back, that will allow us to move Ruiz to be our starting second baseman, and then that'll move Marroquin back into a utility infielder role. So really don't have a big need for Fernandez. So he refuses to be demoted. All right. We will waive and DFA you. Padilla back onto the lineup. And we'll figure out the roster and then the lineups, and then hopefully figure out how to win 3 of these last 4 against the Dodgers. And we're going to have our erstwhile ace, Dave Alvarado, on the mound today. Opportunity to get his record to 500 for the season. Also get enough innings pitched to qualify for the ERA title, although at 460 he is nowhere in the neighborhood. But Chase Crawford has definitely stabilized that number 4 spot in the rotation for us, so feel that with Alvarado, Vargas, Galindo, and Crawford, should have a good 4-man rotation for the playoffs. The hope is that we need the 4-man rotation by making it right into the divisional series, but rather than only needing a 3-man rotation for the wild card series. But as I've talked about, we're going to need to win 3 out of 4 here against the Dodgers in these last games of the year to ensure that that actually happens. And trying to keep things live, but I know it's not that exciting to be looking at the computer in this massive file just moving slowly, and at 9-8 loss, so backs definitely against the wall. They struck for 3 runs. We came back to take a 4-3 lead. They took the lead on us in the 7th. We took it back in the bottom of the 7th, and then 4 runs in the top of the 9th. So when a situation like that emerges, and for those of you who were watching my Pittsburgh playthrough, a bit of poetic justice in that Jose Calderon, brought on to be our closer, blows a huge game for us. Was not in the playoffs like it was in the World Series a few seasons back, but certainly when we had a 8-5 lead heading into the 9th inning with our closer on the mound, probably were feeling pretty good in the Colorado dugout that we were going to get one of the 3 wins that we needed to get this division claimed. And unfortunately, that was not to be the case. And we are now with 3 games left, 2 games back. And the situation is at a desperate point. I'm going to put Jesus Galindo on the mound today, who would be our number 3 starter. Think there is enough time that he'll be able to be our 3rd starter if we need it in the playoffs. And unfortunately, I clicked play the rest of the week rather than play one day. So didn't get to set up the rotation. I think I screwed us with that because I think that means that Vargas just pitched one of these last couple games. So that was poorly executed on by me, given that we have to do a wild card situation. Yeah, Vargas, come on. That was stupidity on my... I normally do is, you probably know when you see me play, I sim through the regular season pretty quickly and go a week at a time. Was trying to go a game at a time, and instead pitched a whole week. So that means that Vargas is not going to be available with his 22 wins for our playoff series. So absolute stupidity by me. To some degree, I think it's also stupidity by my manager in not recognizing that we were going to need him. So the worst case scenario possible emerges here. We lose the division by 1. Obviously, I wouldn't have pitched Vargas that last game, but I clicked on the wrong thing. And now, there's definitely a danger that although we have home field advantage for this upcoming playoff series, that I've really screwed up the rotation, because Alvarado we will have for game 1. Galindo will definitely be available for game 2 or game 3, but Vargas is out and Crawford pitched the game before, so that may mean that Estevan Washington ends up starting a game in the playoffs for us, which was not our intent. So my own stupidity, my own carelessness may have made this season even more disappointing than it ended up. And again, it's extremely hard for me to view this as a disappointing season. If you had told me back in March when spring training ended we were going to be a 96-win team and a playoff team, I would have signed up for that in a second. But after leading the NL West with the best record in baseball, or the best record in the National League much of the season, to end up losing the division, find ourselves in a wild card series despite the fact that we did finish with the 3rd best record in all of baseball, 2nd best record in the National League, is definitely disappointing. And then the fact that I clicked to finish off the season rather than to just play a game at a time, and it means that our top pitcher and one of the top pitchers in all of the National League, Juan Vargas, is not going to be able to pitch in that wild card series is just incredible stupidity, carelessness, and recklessness on my behalf. So overall, the season was a success, but I feel like I may have really messed us up for the playoffs. I guess the one positive thing is that if we do get out of the wild card series, Vargas will be healthy and ready to go in a divisional matchup. So try to take the positive spin on things here. The Rockies are in the playoffs in our 2nd year as general manager of the franchise. Feel like we've made some good strides this year. Obviously, on the field, we went from 74 wins to 96 wins. So that is certainly a huge step in the right direction for the Rockies. Have been above 500 every month of the season, except for March when we got off to that poor start. So although the .550 winning percentage in September was the worst that we've had since March, still 2 games over, solid performance. First in the National League with 940 runs scored, 12th with 795 runs allowed, but last year we were first in runs scored and we were 15th in runs allowed. So feel like the changes that we have made to the pitching staff have paid off. We did end up 53 and 28 at home, so we were 10 games better at home than we were on the road. .654 winning percentage in Colorado. So I do absolutely feel that focusing on pitchers with high movement, pitchers who are ground ballers, and pitchers who have more of a ground ball than a fly ball tendency, while also trying to improve our defense, was the right way to try to build a team to win in Coors. And now with 3 games at home in Coors, we're going to see if we can keep that home field advantage going. We're going to be playing against our divisional rival, the San Francisco Giants, because even though the Braves are only an 85-win team, they do have a division title, so they're going to get the Brewers. Also interesting that both of our former teams, the Pirates and the Royals, in the playoffs this year. The Pirates bouncing back after a real disappointing season last year after we left them. Seems like they have stabilized the situation there, which is good to see. And maybe we'll get a chance for my new team to take on my old team here in the playoffs, depending on how things evolve. But the Rockies are in the playoffs, so overall, it's been a successful year, even though I have absolutely mismanaged things over the last few days of the season. And we'll see whether or not that's going to have any impact on our playoff hopes when we get to the postseason in our next episode. Can see that I missed this in my anger over what I did in terms of simming ahead too quickly. But it looks like Will Lucio is banged up, so we're going to be missing him likely for the playoffs, it appears, with him out 2 to 3 weeks with a strained back. Castillo and Nakahara still questionable whether we'll have them back for the wild card series. Nakahara definitely no. Castillo will be a roster decision. We didn't get much out of Lucio after we brought him back, after we picked him up in the trade, not brought him back. Do think that with that movement, ground ball tendencies, ground baller pitcher type, that hopefully he'll ultimately be a successful pitcher in Colorado, but the 6.07 ERA makes me think we won't miss him perhaps as much for the playoffs, but the 335 Sierra and the positive WAR indicates that there may be something there. So a bummer that we're not going to get to see him in Colorado. CRA on the road for the season was actually worse than it was at home. But that includes what he did with his previous team also. So not sure that there's anything too much for us to read into there. But we will find out how these Rockies do in the playoffs in our next episode, and whether I do anything else stupid to damage their chances of winning. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.